Welcome. I'm your host, Michelle B. Griffin. As an author, speaker, and certified personal brand and PR strategist, I'm here to empower you to get visible, build your personal brand, and own your lane as a visible brand authority and thought leader in your space. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Welcome everybody to this week's episode. I'm your host, Michelle B. Griffin. We are talking about something that's important, and you may be thinking this or feeling this, but it's the subject of reinvention. And my guest today is all about helping us reinvent ourselves so we are doing the work we are created to do. So I want to go ahead and welcome to the show, Lisa McGuire, the founder and creator of The Difference Is You. Welcome to the show and happy birthday. Today is her birthday, so we're excited that she's joining us on her birthday.
Yes, thank you so much, Michelle. I'm excited to be here, and especially on my birthday. It's a great way to cap off the day.
I don't think I've ever had anyone on their birthday, so I really appreciate you spending this time with us. So for those who have not met you yet, Lisa, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we're going to get into this important topic of reinvention.
All right. So if you look at my LinkedIn headline, I call myself a next steps reinvention strategist and culture enthusiast. So what I do is I help people figure out their next steps when they feel like it's time to make a quarter turn, or they want to bring in something new to their business, or they may be in job transition or even ready to retire, that word that a lot of people are afraid of. So I help people figure out their next steps and draw it into their purpose.
I love that. And we'll talk later on before we close out, because you have a podcast very similar with your passion, purpose, and personal brand podcast, which you've had like 2 or 3 years now, and you rock that show. So we'll tell people how to follow that. But it's also aligned about really trying to find your purpose. I can relate. Back in 2015, I think some of us, it hits us maybe slowly, some out of nowhere. For me, it's just bubbled up one day. And I basically, long story short, was kind of trapped for 5 years trying to find my way out. I wish I would have found someone like you, but we just realized we're kind of a burning desire. We're called for more. We're made for more. We need to do some more. So you're calling the term possibly reinvention, maybe another word, but let's get into define what it is and how do we know when it's time?
All right. Well, I think this all started like this flurry of people being very interested in it when we had the luxury to be home and maybe have a little bit more time on our hands, where we had a chance to step back and look at our lives to say, what am I really doing? Who am I working for? And what's all of this? And our families were there, right? And so being able to see that there might be another way than the story we were told, that there might be another way that we could look at to shift our lives. And so this is where people are taking that step back and saying, maybe there is something else I could do. I also want to mention there's a lot going on in the world now as far as disruptions. All of the systems that were created to keep us safe, we're starting to notice are breaking down and maybe not supporting us in the same way. So when all of that chaos is out there, where do we go? We go to look inside.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always say the answers are there, but we don't realize that on the surface level. So for me, back then, I was looking at courses, credentials, content, finding all the answers externally, trying to at least, and just staying stuck in a professional confusion hamster wheel. And it wasn't until I started putting myself out there, really finding some internal answers. You got to start inward. But the word reinvention itself can be very off-putting to some people because I think, well, I want to just be me. Does that mean I have to, work who I am, what I believe? Now, you have another word you kind of bring into play. Can you describe what that is?
Sure. And you're exactly right, Michelle, because when I was looking at how I could bring this program into the world, what I was looking at is I was looking first at myself, what had happened to me. I did reinvent myself. And many of the guests that I have on my podcast, we come in and we start talking about what you were doing. And then there was this aha moment. There was an injustice they saw in the world, or there was a need that they saw. And they switched up their lives so they could go do this work, this purpose-filled work. And so everyone I was talking to had already been through a reinvention. I had myself. But as I was testing this out with some of my audiences and talking about doing a reinvention program, I would visibly see people back up. That it was too much for them, this idea. So I started thinking, okay, what do you do for a first step? Rarely does someone wake up in the morning and say, I want to reinvent myself. What they do is they start to reimagine, which is a much softer term.
Yes.
And the process that we take is we start dreaming, we start reimagining. And it doesn't have to be, something huge, something really big. If you think about it, we get a chance to reimagine ourselves new every day.
That's a beautiful way to say it. I mean, it's a fresh start every day. And we have the choice. And that's the thing we have to understand. Not only are the answers inside, but we have the choice. But sometimes we need someone to direct us who's been there, who's reinvented, reimagined themselves. I mean, I kind of did it too. And my whole backstory now and why I do what I do is because I was ready for that next step to put myself out there, get more visible. And I stumbled along until I, created my roadmap, which has now been reformulated. But I'm very passionate about my purpose is to help the hidden experts that become the visible authorities and really put themselves out there with all the things. But you have it too. So not only did you reimagine yourself, did you use your personal story as a catalyst, or did you see some external thing again layered on top of that why you're doing what you're doing?
Well, one thing I always say, Michelle, is when you are doing purpose-filled work, a lot of times it's a chance to heal your heart. As I said, you see an injustice in the world, or there's a difficulty you went through. And so you want to help make the way and pave it easier for other people to go through. So what happened, I had been working for an organization for quite a while. And when I stepped away to start my own business 7 years ago, I was going through the motions. At that point, I was a messaging strategist and just kind of going through the motions. And I got up and was like, okay, what am I going to do today? Which was fine. But my identity was gone because my identity had been so much of that job description of who I used to be that none of that was similar anymore. And that's where I thought, okay, what am I supposed to do? Now listen to that. That's supposed to, the should, the must, you have to, all of those words that we use to tell ourselves that there's another authority that's guiding the narrative that we need to live out. And I thought, well, who do I really want to be? Who is that? And that's where I started that reimagine process. But there was, like you said, there was nobody out there to help me.
Mm-mm.
So I stumbled my way through. I found some different resources and tools, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? It's taken some time to do. But being able to make that shift was something I saw. And then I started noticing people around me that were also struggling with it.
I guess we were all kind of going through it, but we don't know what to call it. It's like refresh our houses. We refresh ourselves, right? We're still in the same house, but we kind of need to renovate things, and it doesn't have to be drastic. But at the end of the day, you want to do stuff that really lights you up. That burning desire that I had, I knew that it wasn't hitting it on these content and credentials. They were all just tactical things. They weren't soothing that internal, oh, here's where you got to go. And so the work you're doing is just good for the purpose of the show. Where would we start? Both of us went through this. So those who might be experienced, where would they start?
So I think the first place to start is really determining your identity. Now, there's 2 different ways to look at this. When I ask people or I talk about, we don't really know who we are. Well, people will say, well, I know who I am. You know who you think you are, but who are you really? Who are you as far as the person that came here when you started, before the world started telling you what you had to do, what you should do, what you must do? And I think particularly women have a lot of this because we're told to, at least in my generation, I was told, this is what you had to do to be a good mother. This is what you had to do to be a good partner. I was also the oldest daughter. And I don't know if you've this or not, Michelle, but there's something called eldest daughter syndrome. But all of this extra responsibility and pressure that we feel to perform as the eldest daughter. I also went into a profession that was highly regulated, which was education, where it was very much controlled on what to do. So the first thing I would suggest people do is figure out who you really are. not who you've been told to be.
That's a hard one because, I like to say time erases our identity. We don't really know. But if you kind of go back, to me, I had to sort of just get quiet and get away from the noise. I think we're inundated with too much noise, too much technology. Even when we're not trying to reinvent ourselves, right? We're just drowning. And you got to start listening to those internal cues. And you can't do that in a noisy, crowded environment. So do you have any offhand assessments? I know you have your proprietary stuff, but is there anything out there that you could point people to start getting those clues?
Well, of course, there's all the personality assessments. But one thing about personality assessments, when you take those tests, you're telling them who you are now, how you're thinking now, right? So that is one thing that you can start with. Another tool that I believe you probably use as well is trusted advisor feedback. So the people that surround you, what do they see in you that perhaps you do not see in yourselves? And I know in working with clients, that's one thing that when I ask them to go out and ask this of people, they're a little bit scared about what they might get. But I have yet to find anyone that comes back that was not just overwhelmed and amazed with the nice things people said about them, of what they're doing. And then, of course, I use a tool called Human Designs, but I like to pick up on what you said about getting quiet, Michelle. I have a practice every Saturday morning. I take about 30 minutes where I look at what happened last week and what were the lessons I could pull out of it. Where were the wins? What were the things that I thought would happen and what actually happened? Because I think we're so busy, we rush through that we don't see that. And when you do that in a quiet space, and I love being out on my screened-in porch in the back where I can, hear the birds and see the trees and all of the nature that's out there. I think you get to listen, or I do. I get to listen to my heart more than I do my mind. And I think that is what is so critical. We have been so just instructed to use our mind because, we're told we're very intelligent or smart or we have the knowledge. But when really your subconscious, your intuition, it has the answers.
I have been trying to do that too. Depending on how you learn and everything, I've done that on walks. I'm very much an audio learner, reader, and now writer. I've been writing the book on audio too. And I'll just reflect too. And I was out of town for 4 days and I just wrote in my planner everything I did. I'm like, wow. You kind of want to document it and just remember it, even things you did or how you feel. Those are all leaving clues. We have to be a researcher of ourselves, like a sociologist, and just start leaving clues. And another thing I like to do is start paying attention where you feel flow and where you feel friction. Those are the clues, like on the side of the road, you're on the Own Your L.A.N.E, you're looking for the signpost. Wow, I feel really good on this. I really feel friction. So write all those things down. Those really help us. And I find for me, Lisa, I'm almost 10 years from that initial day. It's been 9 years, but I know now that I'm starting to light up on the things I used to love to do back in my early years. And that is lighting me up. So we almost have to kind of go back to think too, what did we used to like to do if you can remember? And those will kind of unearth ideas and memories start coming up too. So those are all the clues we need to put together, I believe.
Yeah, they really are. And I was on with a client today where we were reflecting back what she did in the early years and why things happened. And it was a big aha moment for her that we do naturally have these gifts and talents that we have. But, we listen to someone who tells us that this is where you have to go to school, or this is the course you must take, or this is the path you must follow. And we stray from that. But yeah, I love what you said about being in flow and noticing that.
Yeah, it's huge. That's the internal intuition you were talking about. So anyway, to start reimagining ourselves, we first want to get the clues, internally get silent. And that's an endless process. That's an ongoing evolution there. That shouldn't ever, because you keep learning about yourself daily. So on this whole reimagining, I'm calling it reimagining process, journey now. What's next after that, Lisa? Where would you pinpoint others?
After you get through that first phase, it's looking at really what your values are. And this is where being on LinkedIn for me posting on LinkedIn was so critical for me to discover that. You really inspired me when you came on and you did all of your posting. I think you did 365 days of
Yes.
posting. And at that point, I was posting maybe once or twice a week. And I thought, how can this woman do that? But then I thought, okay, well, she did it for 365 days. What if I start and I did 90 days of content for Monday through Friday only, right? At first I thought
Yeah.
twice a week, but then I thought, well, why can't you do 5 days? Like, you help other people do this. So I committed 90 days of content only Monday through Friday, right? Well, I got through those 90 days. And then I thought, well, let me just do a few weeks more. So now I've been doing it since the 1st of January. But here's the benefit is it lets me understand what I stand for and what I do not stand for. It helps me develop a point of view. It helps me to, as you say, own your lane, but it helps me determine these are the things that I really love writing about. These are the things that really drive a spark in me, whereas these other things may not be as important to me anymore. So I think that is the next thing, is trying to understand what do you value and what are the things maybe you don't care as much about. Maybe you did it one time, but you don't now moving forward. And so that would be the second step I'd look at.
So putting yourself out there, you have to test. You can't find the answers inside. I mean, you can find them initially, but then you got to go out and test them. Like we're talking about being a researcher on yourself, a sociologist. And for me, my put yourself out there thing was because I had gotten out, then I was stuck again. So I was on the sidelines 9 months going, Michelle, you can do it. You can do it. And so I did it. And for me, same thing, Lisa. I'm like, how do people know what to talk about? Well, the minute you get out there, either it be posting or whatever it is that holding you back and you get out there, the ideas flow, the answers come, the aha moments. And you've put so many beautiful posts out, Lisa. I've saved some. I've mentioned some of the LinkedIn branding show. I can see how your inner self has just evolved and solidified to who you truly are. So whatever that is for you listening, or you don't necessarily have to do it on LinkedIn, you've got to put yourself out there and test it. Be in communication and two-way dialogue with others, because otherwise you don't get the answers forever inside. They just spark, but then you got to test them. The PYOT in me loves to hear that. So first, finding the self-awareness, the self-discovery with everything you talked about, then putting yourself out there, kind of testing and learning as you go. Then what do we do, Lisa? I know it's an evolution, but let's have another step, because I know there's another step in the right direction.
Yes, there is. So we've really kind of revisited our past, who we've been, what got us to where we were, where we are now, what we believe in. But the next step is really designing. Who is it that you'd like to become? And I have a mentor, Mike Kim. And so I remember when I started his program several years ago, he said, who do you need to be to serve the people you need to serve? And I know when he first said that, I thought, who else would I be but myself? Like, it didn't hit me right. But then I got it. What is that future you? What do you want their life to look like? What do you want their day to look like? What should they dress like? What should they eat? How do they move? That's where that whole reimagine, where you can write your own story. Who is that person is the first part. And then what can you do today that starts acting like that person? The very first things I did was clean out my closet. And boy, was that a big event. I got rid of about 80% of the clothing in my closet because that's not what the future Lisa would wear. And it was amazing at how everything else flowed from there.
I love that. Back when I was searching in 2015, I picked up a copy of The Success Principles by one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul authors.
Yes.
It's so good. I think the 10-year anniversary is out. And I think it's chapter 8, You Act As If. And it's very much similar to that. That is a book I highly recommend. It's pretty thick, but you can do one principle a day. And that really started helping me. So side note here, I'm not saying leaning into all the content and all the stuff that got me sidelined, but there's some select things out there that can steer us in the right direction. Like for me, I just consumed and binged everything looking for answers like a mad woman. But
There were some things along my journey that really helped. And that was one of the books, and Act As If. And we all have the power. And this is, on Own Your Lane, when L is lead with purpose. Number 2 is assert your difference. And you're really learning in what is the difference I'm here to make and want to make and can make. And this is a lot of what I talk about in that. And you have to really lean into the positioning of who you want to be. Again, an evolution that doesn't end, but you know who you want. So you sketch it out. Would you say write it out? You can't just imagine it. You have to put it to paper or something, right?
Yes, you do. And I think one thing that was very helpful was going back. You talk about, some things when you were a child. I went back to look at what type of movie characters or famous people, whether it was celebrities, that were important to you when you were younger. And it was so revealing to me, Michelle, that my 2 favorite movie characters of all time when I was younger was Mary Poppins and Glinda the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz. What did both of them do? They both came with either a carpet bag full of tricks or their magic wand, and they were able to create things. They were able to help other people see things they didn't see in themselves. That is exactly what I do. And what an aha moment that was for me to go back and look, why did I admire those characters? What was it about their values and their behaviors that I wanted to lean into? So I think that is, an interesting exercise for people to look back. When you were younger, who did you admire?
The expression success leaves clues. I think the past leaves clues. So,
Yeah.
Of course, the closet, our lives, days start in our closets. Fill it with pieces that support your future self now. So, yes, getting rid of all that stuff, whatever it be, a closet or junky office or things that just don't serve you, get them out the way, clear that path so you can own that lane of who you are going to be. It's such a beautiful thing. I can't work in a lot of junk. Like I have to have a clean surface. So I think that helps the future self pops up quicker when we are refreshed and we see the way. So now that we know all this, as we're getting closer in this journey, which never ends, by the way, I want to keep reiterating that. What else would you suggest we do before we, end our time together? So where would we go next?
The last thing is you start taking action, and you don't wait until everything's perfect or things are ready. You go ahead and get out there and you start getting messy. And I want to share with people of one thing that held me back for so long. And this was, I think it was probably the beginning of the pandemic. I can remember I was active on Clubhouse at that time, right? So I'd been on there and was speaking with a videographer friend, and I was a little bit hesitant to go on video, and he asked why. And I was like, well, I don't like looking at myself, or I could look better, all of those things that's self-critical. And he said, Lisa, people aren't paying you to be perfect. And that shifted everything for me, Michelle. People aren't paying us to be perfect. And if you do position yourself as perfect, you're not relatable because nobody else thinks they're perfect, or they don't want to tell the world that they're not perfect. So you're not relatable. So, just start putting yourself in situations where you can try things. And I don't believe that we fail. I believe that we learn things and we grow from them. And if you're concerned what other people are going to think, let me give you a clue. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves, right?
Yes. Yes. We walk around with our own problems in our head, as much as we want. The best line is the Eleanor Roosevelt quote that says, if you worry about what people, you would realize how seldom people do, which is not even seldom, like never. We never think of someone. Even if we see them in the feed, we might for a nanosecond, but then we forget. So that's why, one of those 9 months, I didn't want to put myself out there on LinkedIn. Once you do it, you're like, this is easy because no one cares. You just do it. And each time you put yourself out there, as you were saying, it gets a little bit easier. The answers come. You start talking to people, you get to know more people. The whole process is easier. We tend to overthink so much. And I think that's what holds us back. I'm raising both hands here because I know that firsthand. Yes. But you're right. People, especially after, all we went through in 2020, we want more real and relatable. Gone is that picture perfect. And I think people shy away from all that Instagram perfection. People don't want that. We're over it. We want the real, the nitty gritty, and the less perfect, the better. So I think we're in a good time for that. So As we go on this evolution journey, Lisa, what can we expect on the other side as we reimagine ourselves? What does the transformation look like?
The transformation looks like less imposter syndrome, more confidence, more showing up authentically, or, what I want to say is the person that you meet online is the person that you see in person. But just finding fulfillment and alignment with who you were created to be.
Doing work you're meant to do. And that's the reason why I'm writing Own Your Lane. So you really have that lane. You're in the right place, because at the end of the day, we need to be doing something, right? We can't just sit around. We have to have purpose, a reason for doing, not just a reason for being, but to do work that you're aligned and lights you up with those unique gifts. I mean, that's the whole meaning of life. That's makes life and enjoyable. And it's a beautiful transformation, Lisa. So the work you're doing is it's just beautiful. So I know that just makes you happy. And as you've come out the other side 7+ years ago to do this work to help others do the same, this has just been tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So as we're about to close out, I know people are going to want to know, where do I learn more about Lisa? So tell us where we should find and connect with you.
Well, of course, I'm on LinkedIn Monday through Friday, so you can check out my profile there. It's Lisa McGuire. And also, Michelle, I do have a quiz for people, because there are 4 different types of reimagine you styles that you may be one or another. And so to find that, you go to my website, lisamcguire.com // I don't know which way it is. But it's quiz, Quiz. So lisamcguire.com /quiz.
Well, we'll put a link in the show notes. And of course, it's a must follow to listen to your podcast. And it's your passion, purpose, and personal brand podcast. It's a lot of P's, right?
You got it right. Yes. Yeah. A lot of P's on that one.
I love it because, I've said this before to you, it's very foundational. You're a deep thinker, and, it's not superficial and fluffy, which, in my personal branding work, I'm all about foundational and deeper purpose-filled work. So I just want to thank you for all the work you bring on that podcast. It's truly transformational work.
Thank you. I have loved doing it and connecting with people like you.
Well, Lisa, thank you again. And we just all wish you a happy birthday today. So I know you'll have to go out and finish celebrating. So thank you for spending some time with us. So everybody, that is it on all about how to reinvent or, quote, reimagine yourself. So until then, you're going to have to keep putting yourself out there. Before that, if you're having any visibility blogs, I want you to head to michellebgriffin.com and download my audio masterclass on the 3 ways to get your visibility breakthrough and put yourself out there, just like Lisa and I both said we should do. And so that'll give you kind of the courage, the clarity, and the path out there. So until next time, everybody, keep putting yourself out there. You have a brand to build, a message to share, and people to impact. I'll catch you next time. Take care.